The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and vanilla, a warm cloud of comfort that clung to the air as Olivia stirred the batter for her father's favourite spice cake. The radio hummed softly, some old jazz tune her mother Sharon loved, and the late morning sun spilled through the window, gilding the countertop in gold. It was Michael's 70th birthday, a milestone that demanded the whole family's attention, and the house buzzed with purpose. Olivia glanced at the clock, 10:37 a.m., and mentally ticked off her to-do list. Finish the cake, confirm the caterer, set up the dining room. She thrived in the chaos of planning, but today a quiet unease gnawed at her. "Olivia, have you seen the tablecloths?" Sharon called from the living room, her voice muffled by the rustle of decorations. At 65, Sharon was a whirlwind of energy, her silver hair pulled into a neat bun as she orchestrated the party with military precision. "In the hall closet, Mom!" Olivia shouted back, wiping her hands on her apron. She caught her reflection in the glass of the oven door, 35, with dark curls escaping her ponytail and faint lines at the corners of her eyes. She looked tired, though she couldn't pinpoint why. Maybe it was the weight of coordinating this celebration, or maybe it was something else, something she couldn't name. The front door creaked open and Patrick strode in, his suit jacket slung over one shoulder. At 40, her husband still carried the easy charm that had drawn her to him a decade ago. Broad shoulders, a quick smile, and eyes that crinkled when he laughed. But today his brow was furrowed, his phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, I'll be there in 20, he said into the phone, his voice clipped. He ended the call and met Olivia's gaze, offering a tight smile. "Work emergency, I've got to head out." "Now?" Olivia's spoon paused mid-stir, batter dripping onto the counter. "Patrick, we're swamped. Dad's party is tonight." I know. He ran a hand through his dark hair, already moving toward the door. "It's urgent. Some client crisis. I'll be back in time to help, I promise." Olivia opened her mouth to protest, but Sharon bustled into the kitchen, a roll of streamers in hand. "Patrick, you're not leaving, are you? We need all hands on deck." "Sorry, Sharon," Patrick said, already halfway out. "Duty calls. Liv, I'll make it up to you." He flashed another smile, but it didn't reach his eyes, and then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. Olivia stared after him, a knot tightening in her chest. It wasn't like Patrick to dodge family events, but work had been demanding lately, or so he said. She shook her head, pushing the thought away. There was too much to do. "Men," Sharon muttered, shaking her head as she rummaged through a drawer for scissors. "Always an excuse. Your father was the same way at that age." Olivia forced a laugh, but it felt hollow. She turned back to the cake batter, trying to focus on the rhythm of stirring, when her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from an unknown number. Her thumb hovered over the screen before she opened it. "Check your husband's storage unit. You'll want to see this." Her breath caught. Storage unit? They hadn't used it in years, not since they moved into their house and shoved old furniture and boxes into that dusty space. She'd almost forgotten it existed. The message was unsigned, the number unfamiliar. Her heart thudded, a mix of fear and confusion swirling in her gut. Who would send this? And why now? "Olivia, you okay?" Sharon's voice cut through her thoughts. Her mother stood in the doorway, frowning. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," Olivia said quickly, slipping her phone into her pocket. "Just a reminder about the caterer. I need to make a quick call." Sharon raised an eyebrow but didn't press. "Well, hurry up. We've got guests arriving in a few hours." Olivia nodded, her mind racing. The message gnawed at her, each word a splinter under her skin. She should ignore it, focus on the party, on her father's big day. But the urgency in those words, the anonymity, tugged at her. What if it was important? What if Patrick was hiding something? She glanced at the cake batter, half mixed, and then at the clock. 10:45 a.m. The storage unit was a 15-minute drive. She could go, check it out, and be back before anyone noticed. Her hands trembled as she untied her apron, guilt warring with curiosity. She was supposed to be here, helping her family, but the message was a hook in her mind, pulling her away. "Mom, I need to run a quick errand," she called, grabbing her keys. "I'll be back in half an hour." "An errand? Now?" Sharon's voice was sharp, but Olivia was already at the door. "It's urgent," she lied, echoing Patrick's excuse. The irony wasn't lost on her. As she climbed into her car, the message burned in her mind. The storage unit. Patrick. Something she needed to see. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles whitening, and pulled out of the driveway. The jazz tune from the kitchen faded into the distance, replaced by the pounding of her own heart. What was she about to find? The storage unit complex loomed at the edge of town, a grid of squat grey buildings that looked more like a prison than a place for forgotten things. Olivia's car crunched over the gravel lot, her heart hammering as she parked near Unit 142. The anonymous message burned in her mind. "Check your husband's storage unit. You'll want to see this." Each word a needle pricking her resolve. She shouldn't be here. Not with her father's 70th birthday party hours away, not when her mother was probably fuming over her absence. But she couldn't turn back now. The air was thick with the scent of dust and motor oil as she stepped out, clutching the key she'd dug from a junk drawer before leaving. She hadn't been here in years, not since she and Patrick moved into their house and stashed old furniture, books, and memories they didn't need. The unit was Patrick's domain, a relic of his insistence on keeping things just in case. She'd forgotten it existed until that text. The padlock on Unit 142 was rusted, but the key turned with a grudging click. Olivia hesitated, her hand on the handle, a voice in her head whispering to leave, to ignore the message and go back to the cake batter and streamers. But her gut churned with a need to know. She yanked the door up, the metal screeching in protest. Inside, the unit was a maze of shadows, lit only by a weak bulb overhead. Boxes were stacked haphazardly, some labelled in Patrick's sharp handwriting, tax records, 2015, Olivia's college stuff, others sagging under their own weight. A worn armchair sat in one corner draped with a tarp, and a cracked mirror leaned against the wall, reflecting her pale face. Nothing seemed out of place, just the detritus of a life she'd left behind. She exhaled, half relieved, half ashamed for doubting Patrick. Maybe the message was a prank, someone's cruel idea of a joke. She stepped deeper, her sneakers scuffing the concrete floor, and scanned the shelves. Old photo albums, a box of Christmas decorations, a guitar case Patrick swore he'd play again someday. Nothing screamed secrets. She was about to leave when her foot nudged something under a shelf. A glint of glass. She crouched, her pulse quickening, and pulled out an empty wine bottle, the label faded but legible. A cheap Merlot, not the kind they drank at home. She turned it over expecting a layer of dust, but the glass was clean, the cork barely weathered. Someone had been here, and not long ago. Olivia's throat tightened. Patrick didn't drink much, not beyond a beer at a barbecue or a glass of wine with dinner. Had he been coming here drinking alone? She tried to picture it. Her husband, sneaking away to this dim, musty unit, nursing a bottle in secret. It didn't fit, not the Patrick she knew. But then, what did she know anymore? She set the bottle down, her hands trembling, and kept searching, driven by a need she couldn't name. Behind a stack of boxes tucked into a corner, she found something else, a small, crumpled piece of plastic, shiny and torn. Her fingers froze as she picked it up. A condom wrapper. The air seemed to vanish from the room, her chest squeezing tight. She stared at it, willing it to be something else, anything else, but the brand name glared back at her, unmistakable. Her world tilted. She sank onto a nearby box, the wrapper clutched in her hand, her mind racing. Patrick? Here? With someone else? They'd been married 10 years, built a life together, shared dreams and fights and quiet mornings. They had the key to this unit, just the two of them. Or so she thought. A desperate hope flickered. Maybe he'd lent the key to a friend. Maybe this was someone else's mess. But the wine bottle, the wrapper, the clean glass, they pointed to something uglier, Her phone buzzed, shattering the silence. Patrick's name flashed on the screen. She stared at it, her heart lurching before answering. "Liv, where the hell are you?" His voice was sharp, edged with irritation. "Your mum's freaking out. We need you here for the party setup." Olivia's voice caught. She glanced at the wrapper in her hand, the wine bottle at her feet. She couldn't tell him the truth, not yet. "I had to run to the store for napkins. I'll be back soon." "Napkins?" Patrick's tone softened, but there was a strain in it, like he was weighing her words. "Okay, just hurry up, we're swamped." "Yeah," she said, barely audible, "I will." The call ended, and Olivia pressed the phone to her forehead, fighting the urge to scream. She'd lied to him, just as he might be lying to more, something to confirm or dispel the nightmare unfolding in her mind. She rummaged further, her movements frantic, and found a small, glossy label stuck to the side of a box. She peeled it off, her eyes scanning the text. Luxe Leather Co., a handbag brand. She pulled out her phone, hands shaking, and searched the name. A website loaded, showcasing sleek purses, the kind she'd never seen in their home. Why was this here? Olivia stood, the label, wrapper, and wine bottle in her hands, her breath ragged. She couldn't stay here, not with the party looming and her mother's expectations piling up. But she couldn't unsee what she'd found. She stuffed the wrapper and label into her purse, grabbed the bottle, and locked the unit behind her, the clang of the door echoing like a gunshot. The drive home was a blur, her mind a storm of questions. Was Patrick cheating? Drinking? Both? Who sent that message, and why? The handbag label gnawed at her. Whose was it? She tried to cling to the hope that this was a misunderstanding, that Patrick had an explanation. But the condom wrapper burned in her memory, a betrayal she couldn't shake. As she pulled into the driveway, the house glowed with activity, the jazz from the kitchen spilling out. Olivia sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel, her reflection in the rearview mirror a stranger's. She had to go inside, smile, pretend everything was fine for her father's sake. But the weight of what she'd found pressed against her chest, a secret she couldn't bury. She stepped out, the wine bottle hidden in her purse, and steeled herself for the chaos of the party, and the man waiting inside who might not be the husband she thought she knew. Olivia slipped through the front door, the jazz from the kitchen wrapping around her like a false embrace. The house was a whirlwind of activity, Sharon barking orders about table settings, the caterer's van idling in the driveway, and the faint clink of glassware echoing from the dining room. Her purse felt heavy, the wine bottle, condom wrapper, and handbag label hidden inside like contraband. She forced a smile, but her heart raced, each beat a reminder of what she'd found in the storage unit. Patrick was somewhere in this chaos, and she needed to face him, to see if his eyes would betray what his words might not. "Olivia, finally!" Sharon's voice cut through the noise. Her mother stood in the hallway, arms crossed, a strand of silver hair escaping her bun. "Where have you been?" "The florist delivered the wrong centerpieces, and I can't find the guest list." "Sorry, Mom," Olivia said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I got held up. I'll handle the florist." She sidestepped Sharon's scrutiny, her mind elsewhere. She needed to find Patrick, to test him, to know if the man she'd loved for a decade was a stranger. She moved through the living room, dodging a stack of folding chairs, and spotted him near the back door, pouring a glass of water at the kitchen counter. His suit jacket was off, his sleeves rolled up, but there was a tension in his shoulders, a restlessness in the way he kept glancing at his phone. Olivia's stomach twisted. Was he waiting for a call? A text? Or was she reading too much into every move? "Patrick," she said, her voice low, cutting through the chatter around them. He turned, his smile quick but strained, like a mask slipping into place. "Hey, Liv, you get those napkins?" His tone was light, but his eyes flicked over her face, searching. She nodded, stepping closer, her purse clutched tight. "Can we talk? Outside?" She kept her voice even, but her pulse thundered. This was it, the moment to gauge him, to see if he'd crack. "Now?" He frowned, glancing at the bustling room. We're kind of in the middle of things. It won't take long, she insisted, her gaze locking onto his. Something flickered in his expression. Worry, maybe guilt, and it gave her the courage to press on. He sighed, setting down his glass. Fine. Let's make it quick. They stepped onto the back porch, the late afternoon air cool against Olivia's flushed skin. The yard was strung with fairy lights for the party, a mockery of the warmth she craved. She faced Patrick, her hands trembling, and chose her words carefully. I know about the storage unit, she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside. Someone told me to check it. I found a wine bottle. Someone's been there. Patrick's face froze for a split second before he forced a laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. The storage unit? Liv, what are you talking about? That place is a junk pile. I haven't been there in years. Then why was the bottle clean? She pressed, watching his eyes. No dust, like it was used recently. He shrugged, his smile thinning. I don't know. Maybe I lost the keys and someone found them. Kids, maybe, sneaking in to drink. His words were smooth, practiced, but he shifted his weight, his fingers tapping against his thigh. Did you find anything else? The question hung between them, a trap she hadn't expected. He was fishing, testing her. She swallowed, keeping her face neutral. Just the bottle, she lied, the handbag label and condom wrapper burning in her purse. But it's weird, right? Someone using our unit. Yeah, weird, he echoed, his gaze sliding away. I'll get the lock changed. Don't worry about it. He stepped closer, his hand brushing her arm. We've got a party to pull off. Let's focus on that, okay? Olivia nodded, but her mind screamed. He was lying, or at least hiding something. That flicker of relief when she didn't mention the wrapper or label, the way he deflected. It wasn't the Patrick she knew. Or maybe it was, and she'd been blind all along. Back inside, the preparations surged on. Olivia threw herself into tasks, arranging flowers, checking the guest list, trying to drown her thoughts. But she watched Patrick from the corner of her eye. He was everywhere and nowhere, refilling his water glass 3 times in an hour, stepping outside to take a call, his laugh too loud when Sharon made a joke. He wasn't himself, and it fueled her doubt, each oddity a brick in the wall between them. The guests began to arrive, their chatter filling the house. Olivia's aunt and uncle swept in, arms full of gifts, followed by neighbours and old family friends. Then Dustin and Sophie appeared at the door, her brother's easy grin a balm to Olivia's frayed nerves. At 30, Dustin was all warmth, his dark hair tousled, his arm around his new wife. Sophie, 24 and radiant, wore a sleek black dress, her blonde hair cascading over one shoulder. A handbag dangled from her arm, its leather gleaming under the foyer light. Olivia greeted them, hugging Dustin tightly, her exhaustion easing in his presence. You made it, she said, managing a smile. Wouldn't miss Dad's big day, Dustin replied, his eyes crinkling. Sophie's been talking about this party all week. Sophie laughed, a little too brightly. It's going to be perfect. You've outdone yourself, Olivia. Her voice was warm, but her gaze darted away, landing somewhere across the room. Olivia followed her glance and froze. Patrick stood by the dining table, his eyes locked on Sophie for a moment too long before he turned away, busying himself with a stack of napkins. The air thickened, a silent thread pulling taut. Olivia's gaze dropped to Sophie's handbag, its logo glinting, Luxe Leather Company. The same brand as the label in the storage unit. Her stomach lurched. It couldn't be. She forced herself to move to join the conversation, but her mind was a storm. The handbag, the wine bottle, the wrapper, pieces of a puzzle she didn't want to solve. She approached Sophie, her voice calm despite the chaos inside. That's a gorgeous bag, she said, nodding at the purse. Where'd you get it? Sophie's smile faltered, her fingers tightening on the strap. Oh, this? A friend recommended the brand. Got it on sale. Her words tumbled out, too fast, and her eyes flicked toward Patrick again, a fleeting, panicked glance. Olivia's heart sank, the truth clawing at her. Sophie's reaction, Patrick's stare, it was too much. She nodded, forcing a smile. Love it. Can you send me the store's address? I could use one like that. Sure, Sophie said, but her voice wavered, and she didn't meet Olivia's eyes. I'll find it later. Olivia stepped back, her pulse roaring. She didn't need the address, she knew enough. The party swirled around her, laughter, clinking glasses, her father's booming voice as he greeted guests. But it felt distant, like a scene from someone else's life. Patrick was across the room, his smile fixed, but she saw the strain in it, the way he kept his distance from Sophie. She couldn't do this here, not in front of everyone. But the truth was closing in, and she couldn't outrun it. Olivia took a breath, her resolve hardening. She'd confront Patrick again, no games this time. Whatever he was hiding, she'd drag it into the light, no matter what it cost. The dining room glowed with candlelight, the table a mosaic of crystal and flowers, but Olivia felt like she was drowning. The party was in full swing, guests laughing, her father Michael holding court with stories of his youth, the jazz from the kitchen now a live quartet in the corner. Yet her eyes kept darting to Patrick, who stood near the bar, his smile tight as he poured another glass of water, and to Sophie, whose handbag hung on her chair like a taunt. The Luxe Leather Common logo burned in Olivia's mind, tying the storage unit's secrets to this moment, this room, this betrayal. She couldn't breathe here, surrounded by pretense. Sophie's nervous glance at Patrick, his restless energy. It was all too much. Olivia set down her wineglass, her hands shaking, and slipped toward the back door. She needed air, and she needed answers. Now, Patrick, she called, her voice cutting through the hum of conversation. He turned, his eyes narrowing, but he followed her outside without a word. The porch was dark, the fairy lights casting long shadows across the grass. The cool April air did nothing to calm the fire in her chest. What's going on, Liv? Patrick asked, his tone wary. He stood a step away, arms crossed, like he was bracing for a fight. Olivia's heart pounded, her purse still heavy with the condom wrapper and handbag label she hadn't revealed. She wanted to scream, to throw the evidence at him, but she needed him to break first. I know, Patrick, she said, her voice low and trembling. I know about the storage unit, the wine bottle, the other things. You and Sophie. His face went still, a mask of shock that cracked almost instantly. Sophie. Liv. What are you talking about? His laugh was forced, brittle. You're jumping to conclusions. I told you I lost the keys. Someone else. Stop lying. Her voice broke, tears stinging her eyes. I saw her handbag. It's the same brand as the label I found. She looked at you, Patrick, like she was scared I'd say something. How could you? Her breath hitched, her world crumbling with every word. With my brother's wife? Patrick's jaw tightened, his hands dropping to his sides. For a moment he said nothing, the silence damning. Then he stepped closer, his voice low. It's not what you think. You're blowing this out of proportion. Then tell me, she shouted, her voice echoing in the quiet yard. Tell me I'm wrong. He looked away, his shoulders slumping. It was one time, he muttered, the words barely audible. A mistake. You stopped paying attention to me, Liv. You were always busy, always with your family, your plans. I felt invisible. The words hit like a slap, twisting her pain into rage. So you slept with Sophie, my brother's wife, and you blame me? She was hyperventilating now, her vision blurring. How could you do this? Patrick's eyes flashed with desperation. It was nothing. A stupid one-time thing. We can work this out, Liv. Don't... He grabbed her arm as she turned toward the house. Don't ruin your dad's birthday over this. You'll tear everything apart. She yanked free, shaking her head. You already did that. Her voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of her resolve. She didn't care about the party, the guests, the perfect facade her family clung to. She couldn't carry this lie any longer. Olivia stormed inside, her pulse roaring. The dining room was a tableau of warmth. Michael at the head of the table, Sharon passing a platter, Dustin joking with a cousin. Sophie sat across from him, her face pale, her handbag tucked under her chair. Olivia stopped in the centre of the room, her hands clenched, and the chatter died as eyes turned to her. "Patrick's been cheating on me," she said, her voice clear and unshaking. The room froze, forks pausing mid-air. "With Sophie?" A gasp rippled through the guests. Dustin's smile vanished, his gaze snapping to Sophie, who stared at the table, swaying slightly, her head bowed. Michael's face reddened, his napkin crumpling in his fist. Sharon's hand flew to her mouth, but she said nothing. "Olivia! What the hell?" Michael's voice boomed, but Olivia pressed on, her eyes locked on Patrick, who stood in the doorway, his face ashen. "It's true," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I found proof in the storage unit. A wine bottle, a condom wrapper, a handbag label. Sophie's bag matches it. They've been using our unit, Dad. Together." Dustin turned to Sophie, his voice cracking. "Is it true?" She didn't answer, her silence louder than any confession. He shoved his chair back, his face crumpling, and the room erupted into whispers. Michael slammed his hand on the table, silencing the murmurs. "Olivia, you've ruined my birthday," he roared. "You couldn't keep this quiet. You had to drag us all into your mess." Olivia flinched, her father's words cutting deeper than she'd expected. "I'm sorry, Dad. I couldn't pretend," she said, her voice breaking. "Not anymore." The guests began to leave, their murmurs trailing behind them like smoke. Olivia's aunt and uncle slipped out, avoiding her eyes. Neighbours mumbled excuses, their plates half-eaten. Soon only the family remained. Olivia, Patrick, Dustin, Sophie, Michael and Sharon, sitting in a wreckage of silence. Olivia faced Patrick and Sophie, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "Explain yourselves." Patrick looked away, his jaw tight. Sophie's eyes stayed on the floor, her hands twisting in her lap. Their silence was a confession, a blade in Olivia's heart. Michael stood, his face a mask of fury. "You didn't just ruin my day, Olivia," he said, his voice low and venomous. "You've broken 2 families." Olivia's knees buckled, her father's betrayal sharper than Patrick's. Sharon sat silent, her eyes on her plate, offering no defense. Dustin reached for Olivia's hand, his own eyes wet with pain, the only anchor in the storm. "I'm done," Olivia whispered, her voice barely audible. She turned away, the weight of her family's judgment crushing her, but her resolve unbroken. She'd exposed the truth no matter the cost. Now she had to face what came next. The house was a tomb in the wake of the birthday dinner, the fairy lights dimmed, the dining table littered with abandoned plates and half-empty wine glasses. Olivia stood in the living room, her arms wrapped around herself, the silence louder than the chaos of hours before. The guests were gone, their whispers lingering like ghosts. Patrick had retreated to the guest room, Sophie had left with a suitcase, and Dustin sat on the couch, his head in his hands. Michael and Sharon remained in the kitchen, their low voices a murmur of judgment Olivia couldn't bear to hear. She'd exposed the truth, but the cost was heavier than she'd imagined. Her father's words, "You've broken 2 families," echoed in her mind, each syllable a wound. She'd expected anger, maybe even support, but not this. Her family turning against her, blaming her for shattering the illusion they'd all clung to. Dustin looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "I'm with you, Liv," he said, his voice raw. "Sophie, I can't believe she—" He broke off, shaking his head. "I'm done with her." Olivia nodded, her throat tight. Dustin's pain mirrored her own, a shared betrayal that bound them closer than ever. "I'm done with Patrick too," she said, the words heavy but certain. "I can't stay with him. Not after this." Divorce. The word felt foreign, a jagged edge she hadn't anticipated when she'd vowed forever 10 years ago. But there was no going back, not after the condom wrapper, the handbag label, Patrick's half-hearted confession. Dustin's jaw tightened, his own resolve hardening. "I'll call a lawyer tomorrow," he said. "For both of us." The kitchen door swung open and Michael stormed in, his face still flushed with anger. Sharon trailed behind, her eyes downcast. "You've made a mess of everything, Olivia," Michael said, his voice low but venomous. "You couldn't talk to Patrick quietly? You had to humiliate us all?" Olivia's chest ached, her father's rejection a fresh cut. "Humiliate us," she shot back, her voice trembling. "Patrick and Sophie betrayed us. I didn't do that. They did." "You could have handled it privately," Michael snapped, "kept the family together. But you chose to air our dirty laundry for everyone to see." Sharon said nothing, her silence a betrayal of its own. Olivia searched her mother's face for a flicker of support, but found only avoidance, a refusal to meet her gaze. "Mom?" she whispered, desperate for an ally. Sharon's lips parted, but no words came. She turned away, busying herself with a stack of napkins, and Olivia's heart sank. Her family, her foundation, had crumbled in a single night. "I'm not sorry," Olivia said, her voice steadier now. "I couldn't live a lie. If that makes me the villain, so be it." She looked at Dustin, the only one who hadn't turned away. "Let's go." They left the house together, the night air sharp against Olivia's skin. She drove to her own home, Dustin in the passenger seat, the silence between them heavy but comforting. Patrick wasn't there, likely hiding, avoiding the wreckage he'd caused. Olivia didn't care. She'd start the divorce process, pack her life, and leave this town behind. A new city, a new start, somewhere her family's judgment couldn't reach her. But one question lingered, a loose thread she couldn't ignore. The anonymous message. "Check your husband's storage unit. You'll want to see this." Whoever sent it had known about Patrick's betrayal, had wanted her to uncover it. Why? And how? The answer felt tied to the storage unit complex, a place that held the secrets that had unraveled her life. The next morning, while Dustin met with a lawyer, Olivia drove back to the storage unit. The gravel lot was empty, the grey buildings stark under the overcast sky. She didn't expect to find more evidence. Patrick's lies were already exposed, but she needed clues about the message. Was it another renter? A neighbour? Someone with a grudge? She walked the perimeter, her sneakers crunching on the gravel, her mind replaying the text. The unit's padlock was unchanged, the door still sealed, but she wasn't here to go inside. She scanned the area, noting a small security office near the entrance, its window dark. As she approached, a man stepped out. A security guard, his uniform faded, his face lined with years. He was older, maybe 60, with grey hair and a cautious gaze. "Need help, Mom?" he asked, his voice gruff but kind. Olivia hesitated, then took a chance. "We rent a unit here, number 142. She watched his face, searching for a reaction. His eyes sharpened, locking onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. He knew something. "Unit 142, he repeated, his tone careful. "You're the spouse listed on the rental, aren't you? Olivia, right?" Her heart skipped. "How do you know my name?" He sighed, glancing away, then back at her. "I'm Frank. I sent you the message." Olivia's knees weakened, the world tilting again. "You? Why? What do you know about my husband?" Frank's jaw tightened, his gaze distant. "I've seen things. Your husband, others, using that unit. I'm sorry for what it's done to you, but I had to tell you. It was the right thing." Olivia stared at him, a mix of gratitude and anger swirling inside. This stranger had upended her life, exposed a truth she might never have faced. "You ruined everything," she said, her voice breaking. "My family's gone. They blame me." Frank's face softened, his eyes heavy with regret. "I know what it's like to lose everything. I've been there. But you deserve to know." She wanted to hate him, to scream that her happy life might have continued without his interference. But deep down, she knew he was right. The lie would have eaten her alive. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why do you care?" Frank looked at the ground, then back at her. "That's a long story. but I'll tell you if you want to hear it. Olivia nodded, her resolve flickering back to life. She'd lost her family, her marriage, her home. But she had Dustin, and now this stranger who'd changed everything. She needed answers, and she'd start with Frank. As she followed him into the security office, the weight of her losses pressed against her, but so did a spark of something new. Hope, maybe, or the strength to rebuild. The security office at the storage unit complex was cramped, its walls lined with grainy monitors and a bulletin board of faded notices. Olivia sat across from Frank, a chipped mug of coffee warming her hands, the steam curling in the dim light. Outside, the April sky was heavy with clouds, but inside, the air felt charged with the weight of truth. Frank's confession, that he'd sent the anonymous message, had shaken her, yet she needed to understand why. Her life lay in ruins, but this stranger with his weathered face and steady gaze held the key to the final piece of her unraveling. "Why me?" Olivia asked, her voice soft but firm. "Why did you care enough to tell me about Patrick?" Frank leaned back in his chair, his hands clasped, his eyes distant. "It's a long story," he said, his voice low like he was unearthing something buried deep. "But you deserve to know." He began, his words measured but heavy. 20 years ago, Frank had been a different man. Arrogant, self-assured, the kind who thought he could have it all. He'd been married for 7 years to a woman who loved him fiercely, but when another woman's attention sparked new feelings, he didn't walk away. "I still loved my wife," he said, his voice cracking, "but I was stupid, chasing something I'd lost in myself. I cheated. When she found out, I saw what I'd done to her. Her eyes. I'll never forget that look." Olivia's chest tightened, the pain in Frank's voice echoing her own. She saw herself in that moment, staring at the condom wrapper in the storage unit, her world tilting. Frank continued. His wife took him back, but the trust was gone. They limped along for a few years before parting ways. Then, karma came for him. He fell for someone new, only to be cheated on 2 years later. "I felt what my wife felt," he said, his gaze meeting Olivia's. "Devastation. I deserved it 100%. Been alone ever since, just an old guy with a messed-up past." Olivia sipped her coffee, the bitterness grounding her. "So why get involved with me?" Frank's jaw tightened. "I've worked here 10 years. Seen a lot. People hiding things, using these units for more than storage. Your husband, he was one of them. I saw him with women, multiple times, over the years. Not just Sophie. He thought he was slick, but I knew what he was." He paused, his eyes softening. "When he rented the unit, he listed 2 numbers. Yours was the second, marked as his spouse. I figured you deserved to know before it went on any longer." Olivia's breath caught. Multiple women. The betrayal cut deeper, but it also clarified things. Patrick wasn't just a man who'd made a mistake. He was a pattern, a lie she'd lived inside. "You could have stayed out of it," she said, her voice trembling. "My family blames me now. They think I should have kept quiet, saved face." Frank's face fell, regret etching deeper lines around his eyes. "I'm sorry for the pain it caused. I thought about staying quiet, but I couldn't. I looked at you, at the records, your name, and I saw my wife all those years ago. I had to do right by someone, even if it cost me." Olivia set down her mug, her hands steady for the first time in days. She wanted to be angry, to blame Frank for the wreckage of her family, but she couldn't. He'd given her the truth, a painful gift she'd needed, even if it had torn her world apart. "Thank you," she said, the words surprising her. "It hurts, but I'm glad I know." Frank's shoulders relaxed, a faint smile breaking through. "You're stronger than you think, Olivia. You'll get through this." She managed a small laugh, the sound foreign but real. "I don't feel strong. My parents won't speak to me. My mum just stood there, letting my dad tear into me. Dustin's the only one left." "Then hold on to him," Frank said, "and don't let their judgment define you. They're wrong to side with lies. Olivia nodded, his words a lifeline. She thought of Dustin, who'd already filed for divorce from Sophie, his support unwavering. She'd filed her own papers against Patrick, the legal process a quiet severing of a life she'd once cherished. The house was on the market, her bags packed for a move to a new city, a coastal town 2 hours away, where the air was salt-sharp and the past felt distant. Dustin was coming with her, both of them ready to start over. "I'm leaving soon," she said, meeting Frank's gaze. "New city, new life. But I had to know who you were before I went." Frank chuckled, a warm, gravelly sound. "Well, you've got my number now. I'm just a call away if you need an old man's stories to keep you grounded." Olivia smiled, the first real one in days. "Careful. I might take you up on that." It was half a joke, but there was truth in it. Frank, with his regrets and wisdom, felt like someone she could trust. Not family, not yet, but something close. Weeks later, as Olivia settled into her new apartment, the ocean breeze drifting through the windows, she found herself texting Frank. He'd send her tales of his youth, some funny, some bittersweet, and she'd share her own, the small victories of her new life. A job at a local bookstore, a coffee shop she loved, Dustin's laughter at their weekly dinners. Frank's stories became a tether, a reminder that pain could forge something new. One evening, as she sat on her balcony, the stars bright above the waves, Olivia thought of the storage unit, the message, the family she'd lost. It still hurt, her parents' silence, Patrick's betrayal, Sophie's deception. But the ache was softer now, dulled by time and choice. She'd chosen truth, and though it had cost her everything, it had given her something too, herself. She pulled out her phone and typed a message to Frank. "Thanks for the story about the fishing trip. Tell me another one soon." As she hit send, a breeze stirred, carrying the salt of the sea. Olivia closed her eyes, the future uncertain but hers to shape, and for the first time, she felt free. The coastal town of Havenport was a world away from the suburban sprawl Olivia had left behind. Its narrow streets wound past clapboard houses, their shutters weathered by salt and time, and the ocean's rhythm was a constant companion, a low roar that filled the silences of her new life. 3 months had passed since she'd packed her bags and driven away from the wreckage of her marriage, her family, her past. Her apartment, a small second-floor unit with a balcony overlooking the harbour, was beginning to feel like home. Bookshelves lined with novels, a coffee mug from a local shop, a quilt she'd bought at a flea market. Yet some nights, the ghosts of her old life crept in, whispering doubts she couldn't quite shake. Olivia sat at her kitchen table, a stack of invoices from the bookstore where she worked spread before her. The job was simple, ringing up customers, shelving new releases, recommending titles to curious locals. But it grounded her, gave her days a shape. She glanced at her phone where a text from Dustin glowed. "Dinner tonight. Found a taco place you'll love." She smiled, typing a quick yes, 7 p.m., before setting the phone down. Dustin had moved to Havenport a month after her, renting a studio a few blocks away. Their weekly dinners were a ritual, a tether to the only family she had left. The betrayal still lingered, Patrick's affair with Sophie, her parents' rejection, the anonymous message that had unravelled everything. But Havenport offered a clean slate, and Olivia was learning to fill it. She'd even grown close to Frank, the security guard who'd sent that fateful text. His stories, sent in long, rambling texts or shared over occasional phone calls, were a surprising comfort. A mix of hard-earned wisdom and self-deprecating humour that made her laugh when she needed it most. Tonight, though, a new unease had settled in. It started with a letter, slipped into her mailbox that morning, its return address her parents' house. Olivia hadn't opened it yet. It sat on the counter, a silent challenge. She'd cut ties with Michael and Sharon after the birthday dinner, their blame, "You broke 2 families," a wound that hadn't healed. What could they want now? An apology? Reconciliation? Or worse, more judgment? She pushed the letter aside and headed to the taco shop, the evening air crisp with the promise of fall. Dustin was already there, sprawled in a booth, his dark hair mussed, a grin lighting his face. At 30, he carried a new weight in his eyes, the scars of Sophie's betrayal, but his warmth was unchanged. "You look like you're plotting something," he teased as she slid into the seat across from him. "Just surviving paperwork," she said, forcing a smile. "You?" "Same. New job's kicking my butt." He'd landed a gig at a local gym, coaching fitness classes, and, though he loved it, the hours were long. "But I'm good. Better than I was." They ordered tacos, spicy shrimp for her, carnitas for him, and talked about small things. A funny customer at the bookstore, a client who'd tried to deadlift too much. But the letter weighed on Olivia's mind, and Dustin, ever perceptive, noticed her distraction. "What's up, Liv?" he asked, leaning forward. "You're not all here." She sighed, pulling the envelope from her purse. "This came today, from Mum and Dad." Dustin's face hardened. "You don't have to read it. They made their choice." "I know," she said, tracing the address with her finger. "But part of me wonders, what if I'd handled it differently? Kept quiet like Dad wanted? Would we still have a family?" Dustin's jaw tightened. "Don't do that to yourself. Patrick and Sophie did this, not you. You told the truth. That's not a mistake." His words steadied her, but the doubt lingered. She tucked the letter away, promising herself she'd face it later. The rest of dinner was lighter, their laughter a balm, and by the time they parted, Olivia felt stronger, her brother's support a reminder of what she hadn't lost. Back home, she opened her laptop and found a new email from Frank, a story about a disastrous camping trip from his 20s that had her chuckling. She replied, sharing a tale of her own, a customer who'd insisted the bookstore carry a non-existent book. "Keep the stories coming," she wrote. "They're better than therapy." The letter still sat on the counter, its presence louder now. Olivia poured a glass of wine, took a deep breath, and slit it open. Her mother's handwriting filled the page, formal and restrained. "Olivia, we wish you'd chosen differently, but we understand you felt you had no choice. Your father is still hurt, but we hope you're well. Perhaps in time we can talk. No apology, no warmth, just a tepid olive branch that felt more like obligation than love." Olivia's eyes stung, but she didn't cry. She'd hoped for more, a real reckoning, an acknowledgement of her pain. But this was all they could offer. She folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer, a relic of a family she no longer knew. Dustin was right. They'd made their choice, and she'd made hers. The next day she called Frank, needing his perspective. "They sent a letter," she told him, pacing her balcony, the harbour glinting below. "It's like they're still blaming me, but they want to talk someday. I don't know what to feel." Frank's voice was steady, warm. "They're stuck in their own story, Olivia. You can't change that. But you're building something new. Don't let their words pull you back." She nodded, though he couldn't see. "You're right. It's just hard, letting go." "I know," he said, a smile in his voice, "but you're doing it. And you've got people in your corner, your brother, and this old guy who's not half bad." Olivia laughed, the sound bright against the waves. "Not half bad at all." The Havenport apartment was quiet, save for the distant crash of waves against the harbour. Olivia sat on her couch, a half-read novel abandoned in her lap, her mind tangled in the events of the past month. Her mother's rejection still gnawed at her. Why had her mother, always her confidant, stood silent? The questions lingered, unanswered, until one day her phone buzzed on the coffee table, jolting her from her thoughts. The screen showed her mother's name. Her heart lurched. She hadn't spoken to Sharon since that night, and the sight of her name was both a lifeline and a threat. Olivia hesitated, her thumb hovering, then answered. "Mom?" "Olivia." Sharon's voice was soft, strained, like she'd rehearsed the words. I needed to talk to you. Can you listen? Please." Olivia's throat tightened. "I'm listening," she said, bracing herself. There was a pause, the sound of Sharon's uneven breathing filling the line. "I owe you an explanation," she began, "for why I didn't say anything that night, for why your father reacted the way he did." Olivia's grip on the phone tightened, her pulse quickening. "Go on." Sharon's voice trembled as she spoke. "When your father and I were young, just a few years into our marriage, things weren't easy. We were struggling, money, stress, 2 kids. Michael, he cheated on me. With a co-worker. I found out by accident. A note in his pocket. It broke me, Olivia. I thought my world was over." Olivia's breath caught, her stomach twisting. Her father? The man who'd taught her to ride a bike, who'd preached family loyalty at every holiday. "Dad cheated," she whispered, the words tasting like ash. "Yes," Sharon said, her voice heavy with old pain. "I confronted him. He begged for forgiveness, swore it was a mistake, that he loved me. We had you and Dustin to think about, and I couldn't bear the thought of tearing our family apart. So we made a pact, keep it secret, work through it, never let it touch you kids. We went to counseling, rebuilt trust. It wasn't perfect, but we made it work. For the family." Olivia's eyes stung, her vision blurring. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because of what happened at the dinner," Sharon said, her voice breaking. "When you announced Patrick's affair, it brought it all back for me. I saw myself in you, facing that pain. But your father, he saw himself in Patrick. He couldn't face that truth again, not in front of everyone. That's why he blamed you. He couldn't bear to condemn Patrick without condemning himself." Olivia's knees buckled, and she sank deeper into the couch. Her father's hypocrisy was a fresh wound, his anger at her a deflection of his own guilt. "So he let me take the fall," she said, her voice shaking. "And you just stood there?" "I was scared," Sharon admitted, tears in her voice. "I froze. I'd spent decades protecting our family's image, hiding that pain. I didn't know how to stand up for you without unraveling everything we'd built. I'm sorry, Olivia. I failed you." The apology was a fragile thing, too late to mend the fracture, but enough to crack Olivia's resolve. She wiped her eyes, her chest aching with a mix of horror and pity. Her father, a cheater. Her mother, a keeper of secrets. The family she'd idolized was a facade built on the same lies she'd refused to live with. "I needed you," Olivia said, her voice barely audible. "Both of you. And you chose him over me." "I know," Sharon whispered. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to understand. I love you, Olivia. I always will." The call ended, and Olivia sat in the silence, the phone still in her hand. Everything made sense now, but it didn't ease the pain. If anything, it made her angrier. She texted Dustin, needing her brother's clarity. "Can you come over? Mum just called. Big news about Dad." Within 20 minutes, he was at her door, his face etched with concern. She told him everything: Sharon's confession, Michael's affair, the pact to keep it hidden. Dustin's jaw tightened, his eyes darkening with the same betrayal Olivia felt. "He's a hypocrite," Dustin said, pacing her small living room. "Blaming you when he did the same thing? And Mom just went along with it?" Olivia nodded, her voice hoarse. "She said she was protecting us, but it feels like they protected themselves." Dustin stopped, his hands on his hips. "You did the right thing, Liv. You didn't hide Patrick and Sophie's mess. You faced it. They can't take that from you." His words steadied her, a reminder of the strength she'd found in Havenport. As spring turned to summer, Olivia's life in Havenport took root. She earned a promotion at the bookstore, managing events that filled the shop with laughter and stories. Dustin's gym classes grew, his grin wider each time they met. Frank visited once, driving up for a coffee that stretched into hours, his tales of the storage unit's quirks making her sides ache. He was family now, not by blood but by choice, a wise old man who'd seen her through the dark. One evening, Olivia stood on her balcony, a breeze carrying the scent of salt and possibility. The letter from her parents was a distant memory. its weight replaced by the life she'd built. She thought of the storage unit, of Frank's message, of the truth that had cost her everything but given her herself. She'd chosen honesty, and though the scars remained, they were proof of her strength. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dustin. "Bonfire on the beach tomorrow? Bring your bad jokes," she grinned, typing back. "Only if you bring your worse ones." The ocean